welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm your host, Jurjevich. Joining me this evening is the one, the only Wayne Ridenauer in Memphis, Tennessee. And of course, our newest co-host, Larry Gardner. And you can find us all at ATL Prime Sports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Personal Twitters at JJ Get You One for myself, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder, who is out umpiring some baseball games tonight and will not be with us. And of course, at LG for Real Though for our newest co-host, Larry Gardner. That's LG, the number 4, REALTHO, LG for Real Though. Larry, how you doing tonight, man?
Man, everything is well. It has been a great week so far up to this point. I'm excited about a lot of things that are shaking and baking in the background of my life going on forward. And it is a great time in sports. It's the crack of what we call a great season starting to open up. You got March Madness on the horizon, baseball on the way, free agency, the draft. Man, it's just so much things going on in the NFL. I'm great, man. I appreciate it. How about you guys?
Doing great, man. I'm tip of the cap today to Jim Boeheim. I mean, we got a legend walking out the door right after the ACC tournament loss. He's not coming back for a 48th season, and I opened my eyes to that. Coached 23 first-round draft picks, 2003 national champion, 2005 Basketball Hall of Famer, inductee, I should say. A living legend in the college basketball world. And Syracuse did indeed name the associate head coach, Adrian Autry, as the new head coach. I don't know if that's an interim tag or not. The news is fairly recent, so that's going well. And Wayne, how are you, man?
Well, last game of the regular season, Memphis hosted the Houston Cougars and lost in a game-ending last-second shot by the Houston there to win that game. Otherwise, it would have went into overtime. And I think the Tigers could have taken them into overtime, but it was an exciting game, and Penny gave a nice speech to all of the crowd after the game, thanking us for the support and looking forward to the tournament coming up.
Yeah, you guys should be well in your place in March Madness, and as well as the conference tournament there. You can probably improve your seeding a little bit as a Memphis fan, and let's look forward to what they've done against top competition. They played Alabama, played a close game against them, played Houston twice, competitive in each game. So the Memphis Tigers might be a pretty hard out in this upcoming NCAA tournament. What's on tap for today's show? Should the NHL come back to Atlanta? We'll answer that question. Derek Carr signing with the Saints, what that means for the Falcons, plus some news and notes around the league and around the Atlanta Falcons, of course. And, of course, Braves talk. Right-handed pitcher Kyle Wright has not pitched in a spring training game as of yet. Will he be ready for opening day? All that right here on ATL Prime Sports. Again, if you like the content, please subscribe at ATL Prime Sports. Without further ado, let's kick this thing off. I'm wearing the Falcons gear. We're talking Falcons right off the rip. Former Raiders quarterback Derek Carr signs a 4-year, $150 million deal with the division rival New Orleans Saints. What does that mean for our Falcons here in Atlanta? Larry, I'll throw it to you first, man. This is an eye-opening move, and it's early in the offseason, so I tend to not overreact too much. What say you, man?
To me, it means that the Saints are doing what all the other teams in the NFL are doing, and that's getting better in the areas where they lack. I mean, they figuring out how to get better. It also means that the Falcons, if they want to solidify a chance of winning the division next year, that they need to do the same thing as well. I think Derek Carr is going to be a great fit there for Dennis Allen. He's got the ties back to the Raider days, back early on in his career. So I think that's going to work well. It's not going to be as big as a learning curve for the Saints. But again, how does it tie into the Falcons? With all the Lamar craze going on, and I know we'll probably talk into that a little bit later on here, but Falcons really need to do everything that they possibly can do to tidy up all those holes that they need, build a nice team so that you compete for years to come. I mean, shiny toys are nice and everybody loves them. But at the same time, it's like doing a budget at the house. All of us might want to go drive a Ferrari, but do you want the payment that comes with it? Do you want the maintenance cost that comes with it, where you have to go get certain things? And that's what you get when you get the Lamar Jackson talk at quarterback. I mean, I'd love to have him as a player, but not for what it's going to cost draft wise, capital wise, and those things. It's just not. The Falcons aren't one quarterback or one player away from being Super Bowl contenders. So while it might look good, and I don't agree with all the collusion stuff that's being shared via social media and in the mainstream news as well, it's just a time, if you're a Falcons fan, to stick the course, let Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot do what they do best. Hopefully they will get some Georgia-itis, because for some strange reason, Atlanta just has not wanted to have a Georgia player on its team for quite some time. So hopefully that changes a lot this year. I've got a couple of people at 8 I would love to see them get. But Saints are doing what they're supposed to do. Let's hope the Falcons do what they're supposed to do as well.
Yeah, what does this mean for the Falcons? It means you're going to build around Desmond Ridder for the short term. What does that mean for the long term? Exactly what you said. You put every piece you can in place, and then you can put the quarterback in there with maybe not so great of a ceiling. Let's say, Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia just played for the Super Bowl this year, and what, he's in his third year in the league, came in quickly. You got the team around you. You got the defense. You drafted Jordan Davis. You drafted Dean. You got some rookie pieces that really helped out on that defense this year. Bada bing, bada boom. So that's exactly what it means. They're going to build around Desmond Ridder, and they released quarterback Marcus Mariota last week. That saved another 10 or 12 million in cap space. They currently have $67 million, which is second most in the NFL to do so. So that's exactly what they're going to do. And I like your point about the collusion. I think we all need to stop the charade about collusion. I just think no one in their right mind, in a physical sport as the game of football is going to give anybody a fully guaranteed contract unless you're the Cleveland Browns. So, look, Lamar Jackson is yet to start more than 15 games in a season. In the last 2 seasons, he's only started 12 during the regular season, going 15-9 in that span. So you look at his record, it's not as great as his statistics are. So he's a great quarterback, but he's got to have the perfect fit, the perfect system around him. And Larry, you mentioned it. Atlanta doesn't have that right now. We're lacking in skilled players on the outside, minus, a healthy Kyle Pitts, and Drake London is a rookie. So no more Calvin Ridley out there. He's a Jacksonville Jaguar now. We'll see what that pick transitions, a third rounder. So here we are. Look, if you did go after Jackson, you'd have to give up 2 first-round picks to get him too. So that puts you even farther back behind the 8 ball of building a franchise the way Terry Fontenot wants to do this thing. And let's look at recent history, folks. Russell Wilson, 2012 draft, 3rd rounder. Brock Purdy, just last year's draft, folks, mystery relevant 7th round, won a couple playoff games. Dak Prescott, 4th rounder. And, of course, the greatest quarterback in the history of the game, arguably the greatest player in football history, was a 6th rounder himself. So let's hold our horses on this Lamar Jackson talk. Let's hold our horses on the collusion talk. I just think NFL owners are going, guy hasn't played a full season yet. We just tacked on an extra game. We have 17 games now. You have to win a lot more games to get to the postseason. You got to win one extra one to get to the playoffs and the Super Bowl now. I don't think they want to fully guarantee a contract to a guy that hasn't proved he can win the Super Bowl yet. He's won an MVP. Sure, the accolades are there, and he's a great quarterback. But he has got that tag that Matt Ryan had for a while. Can he win the big one? And I don't know if that's worth putting your team in salary cap hell yet again. So it really comes down to, this is what they're going to do, Falcons fans, and you better be along for the ride. And there are rumors that they may even go after a quarterback with that 8th overall pick. I would be livid as a fan if they did it, but I understand. You want a guy on a rookie deal, and you want that window to reset. So every time you can reset that quarterback window where you don't have to pay him $40-50 million to the going rate, I think that's huge. Wayne, what say you, man? What does this mean for the Atlanta Falcons with the Derek Carr signing in New Orleans?
I don't really think it means that much to the Falcons. I think the Falcons are going to play to their strengths regardless of what the other teams are doing. I do think it's a better deal for Carr. I think he'll like New Orleans better than he did Las Vegas. And, I have a question for y'all. Is it a fine line or is it a big difference between rebuilding and chasing waterfalls? Because I feel like a lot of these teams chase waterfalls with some of these signings and deals they try to make.
I'm right there with you. Look, we saw the Bengals do it, the Jaguars do it, and I think it's 8 or 9 consecutive years there's been a team finish in last place that made the playoffs the next year in the NFL. Every team is so close. You look at the Falcons in the one-score games, I think they had 6 or 7 of them. I mean, you coin flip those games on a different Sunday, maybe they're winning some of those games and they're a playoff team. It's that close in the NFL. And I mentioned the Jags and the Bengals. Bengals go 4-12 in Burrow's first year. It hurts his knee, comes back, goes to the Super Bowl. Well, what sounds familiar there? Jags were in last place. They get Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. Excuse me, I got them mixed up there. And bada bing, bada boom, they're in the playoffs, and they win a playoff game too. So it's very easy to do.
I think the biggest
turn
difference.
It around quickly.
Yeah, the biggest difference in Jacksonville though is the coaching change. I think that made the bigger difference than any of the players.
That's a good point, Wayne. Larry, what say you, man? Any final thoughts on Lamar Jackson and the saga that's going on with Falcons are no longer suitors? Look. And we all know, and I'll ask you this question, this could change come April. The Falcons could be big suitors for Lamar Jackson come April. If the non-exclusive franchise tag is all it's offered, anybody can still offer him a contract. So maybe right now before the draft they're pumping the brakes. Maybe after the draft it's a different story. What say you about that, Larry?
It's a poker game. It's a poker match. It's literally what it is. I'm going to put this before the media, so you got enough to be able to chew on as media experts, while conversations are still being had at Flowery Branch about what we need to do. The whole conversation is behind how Arthur Blank was so gung-ho on going after Deshaun Watson and giving him those kinds of needs, but now not so much on Lamar Jackson. Let's just throw out some stats for you real quick. Lamar Jackson has a 75% winning percentage as a quarterback since he's been in the league. That is huge. That's the reason why people love the shiny toys. Of course, back to your point earlier, JJ, it's been a while since he played a whole season. Running quarterbacks tend to break down a whole lot earlier or a whole lot sooner than your traditional in-pocket guys. All right. If you look at the last 3 Super Bowl champions, there's one thing that common denominator in all 3 of those, and they all ranked top 4 in sacking the quarterback. The one thing Atlanta has ranked dead last on in many, many years. So if you understand that concept, to go back to the fine line point, the reason you get these fine lines a lot of times is you have first or second round draft picks that you think are going to pan out, and they don't. And so when they don't, what it does is it takes you 1 or 2 steps away from being playoff contenders all the way down to the bottom of the barrel again. And Atlanta has been in that because 1 or 2 first-round picks that was in the Dimitrov era did not pan out the way that they thought they ought to, and a team that was competing for the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to say the score because we all know it, and it's right around the corner, but the team that was competing so often every year made a couple of bad draft picks, and then it stuck them right back into, well, they're not rebuilding, they are retooling, as we have heard several times through the Falcons management. When your team is dead last in sacks, and one person from the San Francisco 49ers almost had as many sacks as your entire team, that's a problem. Okay?
Well said.
If Nick Bosa has 18 and a half sacks, but your entire team has 21, that's a big problem. And I don't care if you put the second coming of the greatest show on turf with the Rams back in the day as the offense. If your defense allows 50 and you're scoring 40, you're going to still lose every game. looks good. Highlight film is great. Sports Center looks great, but you're still losing every game. So, and I think Arthur Blank, I think Terry Fontenot, and I know Arthur Smith knows this, and I think they're taking that into the draft, which is why I wish the NFL was like the NBA, where free agency is after the draft for NBA. I wish it was the other way around, like it is in the NFL. I wish it was like that for the NBA too, where you have free agency take place and then the draft. That way you can kind of understand what needs you have as a team. And I think it would serve most owners and GMs a better long-term outlook for what they're trying to achieve, having it that way, because sometimes you can go get draft picks and you think you don't fill certain areas and you don't sign certain free agents, and then it puts you behind that 8 ball again. So long story short, the market is being reset for quarterbacks. I just don't think any of these upcoming quarterbacks that are not named Jalen Hurts are not going to get that type of Deshaun Watson guaranteed money.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody wants to. Like I said, Arthur Blank was all about getting Deshaun Watson to Atlanta until the guaranteed money came into play. He goes, no, we don't do that. And it's just a smart move. And to piggyback on your point about getting these lower round draft picks to hit, look at Isaiah Pacheco out there in Kansas City, another 7th round guy that nailed it down in the playoffs and was a key contributor to that Super Bowl championship team this year. That's my final thought on the Falcons, guys. Real quick, go around some news and notes. Edge rusher and Georgia native Lorenzo Carter did re-sign with the Falcons on a 2-year deal. Sir lone Georgia Bulldog on the Falcons, so I always look out for that one. Good move, though. First off-season signing for the Falcons was indeed Lorenzo Carter. 58 tackles, a pick last year. Was second on the team with 4 sacks, which isn't good, but veteran presence really provided a little bit of help out there for Grady Jarrett, and one of the lone bright spots in some of the Falcons defense this year. So durable player, played in all 17 games. I think it's a pretty good move. Guys, any other final thoughts? Falcons, Lorenzo Carter signing, anything like that? Any news and notes around the NFL? Anybody want to speak on real quick? Larry, Wayne?
No, I'm good.
The only thing I've got, man, is just a couple of free agents that I would love to see Atlanta go after if possible. I'd love to see him go after Javon Hargrave to give the interior line some beef to go right beside Grady. I would love to see that. Or even Sheldon Rankins from the Jets. I'd like to see that as well. You know, one of the shiny toys that might be a little bit too expensive for our taste, but I'd love to put Jalen Ramsey on the other side of A.J. Terrell on in the defensive secondary. I would love to see those types of signings. I want to see Atlanta go defensively crazy here in the draft and in free agency, because that will tell us that there's a commitment to improving what was a god-awful defense, and it has been for quite some time. I love to see that. You can pull a couple of offensive toys off of free agency, or you can pull a trade. Hint, DeAndre Hopkins, if anybody's listening, hello. But realistically speaking, you got to improve the defense. I know it's not pretty. It's not the beautiful, glamorous type that you want to see, but since the days of John Abraham and even Vic Beasley in his second year, you hadn't had that threat with pass rush, and we really need that. If the masses are listening, I can't stress it enough. Pass rush.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I'm with you.
Go
Thoughts. Defensive crazy and pass rush heavy in this draft. Let's move on to the Atlanta Braves. Kyle Wright, the only 20-game winner in the big leagues last year, has not yet appeared in a spring training baseball game. Will he be ready for opening day? I'll tee this one off. Look, I'm not sure anymore. Reports came out that he'll get 2 or 3 spring training starts per Mark Bowman, who's a Braves beat writer. He tweeted it out. He's on pace to pitch, again, 3 spring training games. He had a shoulder issue back in January, got a cortisone shot to try and deal with the pain. So right now the timetable looks like the second series, which isn't a big deal, but shoulder issues scare me, guys. If a shoulder issue is lingering long enough, it turns into lack of velocity. It turns into shoulder soreness. It turns into injured list stint. And it just doesn't look good for one of the bright spots in the Braves rotation, who was going to be your opening day guy. Remember, they announced it at the end of last year. Kyle Wright's going to be our opening day starter. Well, now it'll probably be Max Fried again, and you're looking at a guy who won 21 games last year with a 3.19 ERA that won't be in your lineup till maybe a week into the season. So good news, yes, but barring any setback, man, this could be with any setback whatsoever. This could be catastrophic for the Braves in their starting rotation. Larry, what say you, man? Are you concerned about Kyle Wright moving forward after this news coming forward about the shoulder?
If the Braves if they didn't already have a slew of arms that were starter level ready, I would be more concerned than I am. But if this is a 2-week, 3-week thing, they have enough arms that they can, and they're gonna lean heavily on Max Fried, Spencer Strider, of course, and Charlie Morton. They're gonna be heavily, reliant on those guys. But then you got Bryce Elder, who's shown some stints here in the early spring that he's comfortable enough to give you 4 or 5 innings if need be. We're still trying to figure out what's going on with Ian Anderson. His first outing was not a good one, but he said that he was trying his best to work on some things, and that's when you get all of this nasty stuff out is in the spring. You want to make sure come April 6th that you're good to go. And if you need to rely on Ian Anderson, I mean, you have to take the good with the bad. But I think he can be serviceable enough to step in there and be that number 4 until Wright is good to go. And then he can be in the battle again for the 5th starter.
Yeah, it's concerning as a Braves fan for Kyle Wright to be starting the season like this. But again, per that Mark Bowman report, he's expected to pitch live batting practice Friday and should be ready to pitch in his spring training debut next week. So that is huge news. As long, again, barring any setback, he should be good to go first week of the season, maybe 2. And that's a relief for all Braves fans moving forward. Let's go talk about the NHL. It's rare that we talk about the NHL without Todd here, but Todd is the one that brought this to my attention. And who doesn't love a good hockey game live? We haven't had the Thrashers, and God, see, Todd would know this. I think it was 2005, was it, Larry? It's been a while.
I think so. It's been a minute.
Should the NHL come back to Atlanta? This question has come back around after a tweet from ESPN hockey insider John Buccigross mentioned it may be in the works. Houston's also a potential city. Atlanta and Quebec, where the Nordiques, I believe, came from. Again, you can tell I'm not a hockey guy. But interesting to me, it would try and come back here a 3rd time. I think it could work. It's just you got to have the right ownership. You got to have the right arena, and it's got to be in the right spot. I'll look at Truist Park. They moved from Atlanta and built this beautiful battery and beautiful Truist Park, and it has basically been 1 or 2 in the attendance since it's opened in 2017 or 18. I can't think of the year off the top of my head, but I think the Atlanta market is huge. It's a top 10 market, and the Quebec option, a lot smaller market, but it's going to be crazed fan base. They're going to go in and pack the arena because it's Canada. But I think it could work. Again, right arena, right location, right ownership. Todd thinks the same thing. You can check out his tweets at Corder Todd. He thinks he should put the arena north of I-285, right there in the Alpharetta area, and it can make it happen. Put a battery around the park. And supposedly this thing has some legs, Larry. What say you about the NHL coming to Atlanta again?
Yeah, man. So history, the Thrashers started in 99 and the last game was in 2011.
It was 11. That was a little later than I thought.
Yeah, I was even like, wow, I mean, of course, 12 years is a long time, but I thought it was even further than what that date was. So, yeah, that was like, whoa, for a minute. But I agree with Todd's comments. I think it can work along with your ideal layout. I would love to see Arthur Blank involved in some kind of way because I think he's the only competent owner in the city of Atlanta. I'm sorry, Mr. Wrestler.
I agree.
But I think Mr. Blank is the only competent businessman / owner in sports in the Atlanta area. I agree that it should be outside the perimeter. It's easier to access usually. And I do agree that there needs to be some type of battery set up around it. And here's the reason I say that. Look at all the teams in the Southern and just the Southeast that are having so much success with hockey. The Nashville Predators. I mean, you see just a couple of years ago that they were in the mix for a Stanley Cup. Tampa Bay continues to be in it. They won, 3-4 in a row. Florida had a chance there and had a good run where they was in the running for a Stanley Cup. Carolina, look, one of the teams I followed when Atlanta left, became a Hurricane guy and just followed them. Carolina had success, So you've got a lot of teams in the South that are having great success. And it's all because of the same things that you mentioned. The fan bases are insane. They love live sports. They've got ownership that cares and not the Atlanta Spirit Group. We'll not mention those anymore on this podcast the rest of this day. They still just, they make my earache and they corrode my eardrum in the past. But nevertheless, it's not those gentlemen that corrupted the Atlanta Thrashers, because the fan support was there. I still have my own Ilya Kovalchuk, we call them sweaters, but jerseys, So there are many aspects to us who grew up with the Thrashers who continuously love them. And I do believe if you look at the Gladiators, man, when the Gladiators have the Thrashers night just not too long ago, man, it was insane there. So you get the support. It's got to start right at the top, because if it's not right at the top, the bottom won't ever be right.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's spot on. Ownership, location of the arena has to be huge, and I would preach location, location, location. I think the hockey market is here. You mentioned the Gladiators night, Thrashers night at the Gladiators game, basically sold out. And a cool little fact, folks, I did not know that the NHL still owns the logo and the naming rights to the Atlanta Thrashers. So they've kind of always had this in the back of their head. And folks, if the NHL does expand, they are adding 2 teams, and it looks like that would be a 33 and a 34th team, which would be pretty interesting. I think that'd be the largest professional sports league in America, which would surpass the NFL in terms of amount of teams. So that's pretty interesting. Wayne, any thoughts about the NHL coming to Atlanta?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be a pretty cool thing to have a team in Atlanta, but do you think they have a chance at getting one of those 2 new teams, or should they start trying to get somebody like Florida or Carolina to switch locations?
That could be another option too. I'm not the biggest NHL guy, as you guys know. I wish Todd was here. I read a couple. You can go look at his tweets. He's got a lot of good information out there. We follow on the Prime account NHL to Atlanta. It's its own Twitter account. So it's literally been buzzing since it's left. There is that much fan base here for it. I hope it happens. I really do. I hope it happens, because live hockey is arguably the best sporting event to go to. I remember one time when we were young, I was probably, a freshman, sophomore in high school. One of my buddies that played hockey gave me some Thrashers tickets on the glass, hitting the glass. It's just a cool experience to be at, and I would love to see it back. Guys, any final thoughts on maybe a reemergence of the Thrashers, or any NHL, or final thoughts on the NHL in general before we move to our final thought of the show?
No, I'm good. I really think it could be great, and I think you think about the transition or the transformation of the city of Atlanta from 2011 to now, and the things that you've seen develop here. This is the time. If ever was the time, and I know Houston is in the running too as well, but if ever a time the NHL was to consider Atlanta again, this would be it. The amount of transplants that have come to this city from other areas who do in fact enjoy and like hockey. I know what Nashville's 2.5 hours. Raleigh is 6 maybe on a good day. So those are your 2 closest markets. I do believe that you could get the people here to support it. I do believe that it would take off. but it's got to be, like you said, and we've already mentioned quite a couple of times earlier, it's got to be the right management and it's got to be the right ownership.
That is correct. Well, that wraps up basically our show today. We always do a final thought on this bad boy. My final thought, it's the insane amount of money for the PGA Tour's Players Championship this weekend. $25 million purse. PGA players, you better thank Live Golf for stepping up the money game on the PGA end, because boy, they're pulling out the checkbooks, folks. $4.5 million for first place, and the top 41, get me a freaking club, makes six figures this weekend. How about that for a final thought?
That is wild.
That is wild.
All
Larry,
right.
what's your final thought for the evening, my friend?
My final thought is there was a pinned note from Calvin Ridley, who was just recently reinstated back into the NFL, back to the Jaguars. And he wanted to share exactly what all he had to deal with and what all he had to go through while he was away from the Falcons and the things. I would admonish you all, if you get a chance to go read it. It's in Pro Football Talk. He goes into a deep, deep letter and he shares a lot of different things. And at the end of it, though, he said him and Trevor Lawrence, he's going to put up 1,400 yards easily this year with the Jaguars. Calvin was one of our great receivers. I loved him and Julio on the outside for as many times. But if anytime you ever get into a situation where you get to the level of mental health issues that he had, I was glad he was able to get himself some help. And I'm excited to see what he does for Jacksonville and to see the connection that he and Trevor has. I'm really looking forward to seeing him getting back onto the field and doing Calvin Ridley things.
I like it. Great final thought. Wayne, your final thought for the show, my friend?
I forgot I had my mic muted. Well, we got the American Athletic Conference tournament starts tomorrow. Memphis, Houston, and Tulane all have byes, so they won't play until Friday. And it looks like Memphis could be headed down that road of having to face two teams that beat them twice during the regular season, and having to face Tulane should things turn out like the standings are, and then having to play Houston in the final. So, will we be able to beat those teams who, after being beat twice? Conference tournaments, you never know.
You never know, but the best part is you're in a conference where you're tested week in and week out, and it helps you in the tournament. That wraps up our show. Thanks for listening to ATL Prime Sports. If you like the content, give us a like, a thumbs up, a subscribe, a retweet, a like on Facebook, whatever you got to do. Just give us a follow. That's Larry. That's Wayne in Memphis. I'm JJ for Todd Corder on the other side of Atlanta. Thanks for listening. Get you one.